It doesn't matter if you've been thinking about starting a podcast or a business or a YouTube channel or anything else. If you're thinking about it, you've probably had those thoughts of doubt. What if nobody listens? What if we don't sell anything? What if this doesn't work? I get it. I've had those feelings as well. I still get them sometimes. But I told those voices to shut their holes. And I took a shot and it worked. And if I can do it, you can do it. And it's going to be easier than you think because you can have Shopify on your side. Shopify is like the greatest employee you will ever hire because they can take so much off your to-do list. They have hundreds of ready-to-use website templates so you can get your website up and running ASAP. They can help you create email and social media campaigns so you can reach your customers wherever they happen to be scrolling. And maybe most importantly, Shopify is your commerce expert, helping with everything from inventory management to shipping orders internationally. And if you ever get stuck, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 customer support is there to help you out. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/RTG. Go to shopify.com/RTG. That's shopify.com/RTG. Hello, you've reached the offices of Remember the Game Industries. We will be closed the week of February 27th to celebrate the release of Resident Evil Requiem. Unfortunately, that means there will not be an episode of Remember the Game. Fortunately, we have a review of the previous Resident Evil Village, in our Patreon archives, and our CEO has ordered it released to the public for free in place of this week's show. So, here it is. If you want instant access to hundreds of extra podcasts, including Remember the Game 100% ad-free, consider supporting us on Patreon for $3 at patreon.com/rememberthegame. And if you like the show, please leave us a good review on your podcast platform of choice. Damn it, I almost made it without fucking up a word, and then I fucked it up anyway. God damn it. Enjoy the Resident Evil Requiem review, enjoy the Resident Evil Village. This is supposed to be 1 minute long. Please enjoy the review of Resident Evil Village. Please enjoy the release of Resident Evil Requiem, and thank you for calling Remember the Game Industries. To complain about the length of the show intro, press 1. Really though, guys, I'll be back next week. Enjoy the Resident Evil Village episode, and I really hope we all enjoy Resident Evil Requiem. Oh, I can't wait to play it. Take it easy, everybody. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 89th edition of Remember the Game Expansion Pass. It is one of our Patreon exclusive weekly podcasts here at Remember the Game Industries. One of many. It's like a smorgasbord of podcasts here. My name is Adam Blank, and if you're hearing my voice, maybe seeing my voice, perhaps even watching my voice on the old stream thingy, mabob doohickey, you've decided to throw at least a couple of bucks of your hard-earned money at us. And if that's the case, thank you. And it's one of those like surprise thank yous. It's not the insincere like, oh, hey, thanks. And it's not a generic thank you. It's a surprise thank you because I'm shocked that people have deemed my annoying voice worthy of their money. But if you have, you're a fucking hero in my books. You're all my Ethan Winters. And if you're listening to this episode, that probably makes sense. Because this week for episode 89 of Expansion Pass, it's one of our patented video game review podcasts. I'm blazing trails over here by reviewing video games. And this time around, I'm talking Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8-age, if you read the name with the Roman numerals in it, which is the second appearance of Ethan Winters. And now you see it comes about face, and now you understand what that Ethan Winters joke was about. It's funny, when I started doing modern game reviews on Expansion Pass, I was like, well, if I don't review a game in the first couple of weeks after it comes out, it probably isn't worth reviewing. That used to be my mindset toward modern game reviews on Expansion Pass. But the thing is more and more people sign up for a Patreon every month, every week, and then they go back through the archives. And so now maybe they're like, oh shit, look at all these reviews. Like, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Resident Evil Village, Paper Mario, Metroid Dread. It's, they find all these reviews and they're like, I don't give a fuck if these are old. I want to listen to these, right? Or maybe you finish a game finally that's been on your backlog forever and you're like, hey, now I can go back and listen to Adam's, review of that game. So I'm still going to try to review modern video games as soon as I play them. That's what I like to do that as quick as I can. But if I play them late and I want to toss a review up, 6, 8 months, a year after the game comes out, I'm going to do that. They don't have to go live 2 days after the game comes out. We're building a nice little archive over here of modern game reviews. So I'm going to start doing more of these. So this time around, we're doing Resident Evil Village. I played it late. It came out back in March, and I didn't get around to it until about 3 weeks ago. But we're reviewing Resident Evil Village. This review is going to be spoiler free, as all my reviews are. Don't worry, I'm not going to ruin anything for you if you haven't played the game. I will tack a short spoiler cast on at the end of the podcast like I normally do, but I'll warn you, I'll play music, I'll warn you again. You'll get like a good minute of stopping the podcast before the spoilers start near the end. So you have lots of time to get out if you don't want anything spoiled for you. And if you're on the fence about whether or not you should play Resident Evil Village, I will attempt to answer that question for you right now. I'm almost done with the core Resident Evil series. All I have left to play is 0, and then I want to play the remakes of Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 3. And then Slick Rick has sponsored an episode of Remember the Game about Resident Evil Code Veronica X as well. My understanding is that game is very, very good. It's crazy. I was saying this on the pre-show before I got started. I never would have guessed that Resident Evil would become a series that a fucking pussy like me likes this much. But these are strange times. I went from being like, I'm never playing the Resident Evil games, to being like, I've played almost all the Resident Evil games, and most of them are pretty good. Resident Evil Village is the most recent Resident Evil. Like I said, it is technically Resident Evil 8. It's actually very clever the way they hid the 8 in Village. I love that. It's coming off the heels of the fucking outstanding Resident Evil 7. So it had a lot to live up to. Did it live up to all that? I'll tell you in a minute, because as you know, part of your Patreon perk is a peek past the podcast. So if you want to just grab your green herbs, look out for Mr. X, reload your gun before you open that door. And I'll tell you what's going on around here this week. It's a fucking rookie move that I still do. You like go, you fucking do whatever, you pass whatever invisible gate or whatever the fuck it is you're going to do that triggers more enemies. Then you realize you need to reload, but it's too fucking late. And it just, when you finish fighting enemies in a shooting game, just stop and just reload your gun before you move. Because you never know when you're going to trigger more enemies. It's a rookie fucking move that I guess I'm just a rookie. That's all. Coffee. Honestly, this could be kind of a shorter peek past the podcast this week, because there really isn't much to peek at. I don't have a lot to show you guys. No joke. It feels like all I've been doing for 7 days is recording podcasts, telling jokes, and playing Mass Effect 2. I feel like that is all that I have done. One issue that I am running into behind the scenes right now is finding time to record the actual Remember the Game episodes themselves, the game chat portion of the podcast, because during the week, Monday through Thursday, a big part of my schedule is working on the podcast I'm going to release that week, and then I stream almost every night now, and then I do stand-up comedy on the weekends. And so, and then you got to add in that it's not like my guests are literally just sitting around. I mean, Mark McHugh might just be sitting around with his thumb up his ass waiting for me to call, but all the rest of my guests, they've got jobs and spouses and comedy, a lot of them, and shit like that. So it's trying to find time that works for them during my limited time schedule. It's just, so that's one issue that we're kind of running into. I have guests lined up to record episodes about Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Super Mario Strikers, the original Sonic the Hedgehog. A buddy of mine and I are still looking to record a Jak and Daxter episode that we've been talking about forever. At some point, I want to get that done. I just don't know when. Most of these aren't going to happen until January. It's just a time crunch thing. Usually what happens is I go on like a recording binge, and I'll record 4, 5, 6 episodes of Remember the Game during a week, and now I'm set for the next month. I just haven't had that week in the last couple of months. We've been kind of flying by the seat of our pants. But December is almost done as far as Remember the Game goes. Yesterday, we released Luigi's Mansion, episode 177. Next week is episode 178, is going to be Final Fantasy X, which we recorded about a month ago, but I wanted to release it as close as I could to the game's 20th birthday here in North America, which is December 17th. So next week will be Final Fantasy X. Something is going to go live on December 22nd. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm hoping to do Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but we may not have a chance to get it recorded in time because it is Christmas and everything, right? And December 22nd will be the final Remember the Game episode for 2021. I've decided I'm going to take a little bit of time off the week between Christmas and New Year's. The Rambling Idiot, Expansion Pass, and Game Patch, those episodes will still go live. If you're a Patreon, you're still going to get your podcasts, but I am going to skip a week of Remember the Game, And I think I'm going to skip the live streams for the podcasts that week. I'm going to try to get at least the Rambling Idiot and Expansion Pass recorded early. And then Game Patch, I'll probably have to do the week between Christmas and New Year's because it's hard to record that show in advance. But I am going to probably skip that week. And I apologize to all of you that pay to get access to that level with the video podcast or the lives. I mean, the video podcast will go up. The live stream, the live streams won't happen that week. I apologize, but I think everyone understands that everyone needs a break once in a while. Between Christmas and New Year's, I probably won't be around much. But then in January, we start down the road, man. At some point in 2022, we're going to record Expansion Pass number 100. We're going to record Remember the Game number 200, which is fucking insane. It's really exciting, man. Things just are up and up. I'm really fucking pumped. So, yeah, times are good. And I guess that's really all that's been going on around here. I'm still toying around with the idea of a few more projects, another podcast, but nothing else is going to happen until 2022, aside from my 24-hour stream, which is coming up. You guys knew that plug was coming because it's a really important cause to me. Right now, my Patreon for December is at, and you can find this. It's on Patreon. I never hide the income or anything from you guys. $2,482 Canadian is what my Patreon is worth right now, which means $1,241. What I say, $2,842? I guess it doesn't matter, but yeah. So $1,241 will be donated to the charity cause, and hopefully the Patreon keeps going up over the month of December, and I'll give half of everything I make to that stream. And you know, if you guys are, I've also been selling the lanyards, the Zoom calls. Sorry, I lost my spot in my notes there if it sounded like I was stumbling. And so some money from those are going to be going to the stream as well. So you can find more info about that at rememberthegamepodcast.com if you're interested. Everyone that donates at least $20 is going to have a shot to win a video game of their choice, some Remember the Game swag, or a chance to be my guest on an episode of Remember the Game. So if you want to toss a few bucks at the children, that would be awesome. You can write it off on your taxes and maybe win a cool prize. So yeah, December 18th and 19th, if you're interested. And I guess that's really all I have to tell you guys. It's, yeah, that's your peak. That's been my life over the last week. So let's stay in this festive mood, this happy, giving, cheerful mood, and talk about a man getting his fingers cut off and fighting with an evil doll. It's Resident Evil Village. I am going to cue up that Resident Evil music. I haven't actually looked for Resident Evil music as of the time I'm recording these words, so I'm hoping there is music. There's got to be some music in this game. But when it stops, I'm going to hit you with my spoiler-free review of Resident Evil Village. Let's go. So when it comes to a Resident Evil review, I feel like two questions come to mind right out of the gate. And like number A is the game good, which is a question that comes up anytime you review any fucking video game ever. But then letter two is it scary? That's the other question, right? So, is it scary is a tough question. And that's a little bit more difficult to answer because that's a little bit more subjective, I suppose. But it's also almost as important a question to answer as whether or not the game is good when it comes to Resident Evil. I have to imagine most people, like, I won't lie to you, I don't play Resident Evil to get scared. If I get scared, I'm like, I don't even know if I'd call it a bonus because I don't like being scared. But I know there are people that play Resident Evil primarily for the scares. So I'll answer both because I know it's almost as important as is the game good. So to answer those questions, is the game good? Yes. It's fucking very, very good. Is the game scary? Not really. I didn't find, minus one part, which I will get into in a bit. I won't spoil. I will spoil it in the spoiler cast portion at the end of the episode. That there is one part in this game that might be the scariest thing I've ever experienced in a fucking video game. It is terrifying. But outside of that, this one's not nearly as scary as Resident Evil 7 was. Burnout Doug Kenny wrote in on Patreon and said, I'm a little bitch when it comes to playing horror games. I thought I could handle this one, but it got me. My 16-year-old little sister took it and has since 100% beat it. Dude, okay, I get it, Doug. I am well documented that I am a bitch when it comes to scary things as well. And the thing is like, I don't know how everyone looks at the Resident Evil series. Maybe some people look at them and don't really consider them that scary. They just like the games. But I mean, I don't consider the original trilogy that scary. I think 4 has its moments. 5 isn't scary at all. 6 is scary because it's terrible. 7 is fucking horrifying. This one, I would say this one might be the second scariest game in the franchise. Second or third that I've played. Maybe Resident Evil 2 Remake is ahead of it. It's just got that one moment that'll make you shit your fucking pants. So if you're newer to my podcast, and like I said, you don't know, I'm a big pussy. I don't do well with scary things. I've seen like 3 scary movies in my entire life. Everyone's always like, dude, watch the Halloween movies, watch the Friday the 13th movies. I'm never going to watch any of those. I can just tell you all right now, I'm never going to watch any scary movie you recommend me to watch because I don't like scary movies. And for a long time, I avoided scary video games. I'm slowly coming around on them. Resident Evil 4, I will get into Resident Evil Village, I promise. I'm just setting the table here. Resident Evil 4 was the first Resident Evil game that I ever played, and it was scary enough, I guess, sure, but I thought it was like a tolerable level of scary. It was like a medium spice hot wing. And then since then, I played through the original 3 on PlayStation, which were probably scary when they came out. I didn't find them scary at all, but different times. Resident Evil 5 is all action. 6 sucks. 7's horrifying. But other than so I guess I have kind of started to become a little bit more desensitized toward the whole scare factor. But other than 6, I like all the games I just listed. Scary or not. Like, to me, it doesn't matter whether or not a Resident Evil game is scary. I just want to have fun playing them. I just don't know if there's another genre in gaming where I'm trying to how to word this. In addition to whether or not a game is good, it has another factor that weighs that heavily on it. Like maybe in an RPG, you're like, is the game fun? Does it have a good story? Like maybe that is like the 1-2. Most games, it should just come down to whether or not it's fun. I feel like with scary games, whether or not it's scary probably plays a bit of a role to some people. So I guess we're going to get to the review. I'm rambling here, but I guess I am a rambling idiot. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't know if a Resident Evil game has to be scary to be good. This one isn't scary, but it is good. There you go. All right. That took way fucking longer than it had to. Wildo19 wrote in on Patreon and said, I liked watching my friend play this one. It definitely added a more supernatural feel to the Resident Evil world. However, I think in terms of story, combat, and spookiness, Resident Evil 7 was better. The monsters were creepier, the traps were brutal, and the whole situation with the family felt gross, like the bugs, the food, etc. I also liked how the monsters could come out of that black mold anywhere. That kept the jump scares fresh if you were to die and have to come back from the same spot over and over again. So, you said as far as story, combat, and spookiness, Resident Evil 7 was better. Spookiness, absolutely. I think I like the combat better in Village. The story, I would consider almost a tie. I don't think either story is great, to be honest with you. Resident Evil 7 was borderline too much for me. I don't think I could... I loved that game, but it terrified me. I don't know if I could play a game scarier than Resident Evil 7. I think I found my limit. So I wanted to play Resident Evil Village way back in the spring when it released. I was really excited to play it, but then I was like, I kind of dragged my feet on it because I was like, better hardware, better graphics, better sound equals better scary. It's going to be fucking scarier. And so I dragged my feet on it. But people were telling me left and right, yo, Village is not as scary as Resident Evil 7. And you're right. To me, Resident Evil Village almost feels like Resident Evil 5 to Resident Evil 7's Resident Evil 4. And what I mean by that, if you've played these games, is that 4 had action in it, but it had scares. It had atmosphere. 5 was almost like a straight up action game. Like it was almost no scares. I liked Resident Evil 5 a lot. I liked it more than most people do, but it was just kind of a straight up action game. Village kind of feels like that to Resident Evil 7. It's first person perspective, just like Resident Evil 7 was, but I feel there's a bigger emphasis on action than there is on horror. And I personally kind of liked that. It walked the line for me. I know some people like to be scared, but I don't want to worry that I'm going to shit my pants while I play a game. I already worry that I'm going to shit my pants while I play video games, much less to be scared into shitting my pants. So it was kind of like that, Resident Evil 4 to Resident Evil 5 jump, but in first person. Joe Buck wrote in and said, this game looks amazing, but as someone like you that gets scared playing Overcooked, hard pass from me. I can definitely understand why people enjoy it, though. It's fun watching you jump out of your chair. To be fair, Overcooked doesn't scare me anymore. I got over that. But if you don't like scary games, then it would probably be more fun to watch. But anyway, So get into I know we spent a lot of time talking about the scary. Let's get into the game itself. The game, Resident Evil Village, picks up after Resident Evil 7. It's a continuation of the story. It's the same protagonist, Ethan Winters, this fucking poor guy that just can't get a break. He just gets his hands cut off and his fingers cut off. He gets the shit kicked out of him. He has to go through scary places, deal with fucking horrible people. I do like that it's a continuation as opposed to doing something along the lines of like, I know that all the Resident Evil games kind of line up with each other, but like Resident Evil 4 was totally different from the first three. Resident Evil 5 was different from Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 7 was different from Resident Evil 5. I like that this is, in ways, Resident Evil Village is Resident Evil 7 Part 2. Same character, same storyline, same basic control mechanics and everything. It does give you a basic breakdown of what happened in Resident Evil 7 to catch you up on the story if you haven't played it. But if you're wondering and you're asking me, hey Adam, should I play Resident Evil 7 before I play Resident Evil Village? Yes, I strongly recommend that you play both. I think that they're both great. They're both more than worthy of a playthrough in their own right. 7's just a little bit scarier, but the storyline continues. So I would recommend and you can get Resident Evil 7 dirt cheap. It's on Game Pass. I'm mostly confident that it's on the PlayStation Plus collection on PS5. If you're buying it on PS4 or you don't have Game Pass or whatever, or you're playing on PC or one of those nerds, you can get it. I'm sure you can get Resident Evil 7 fucking dirt cheap these days. I would recommend firing it up and playing through it before you play Resident Evil 8. It'll just make Resident Evil 8 feel better. Fucking the story makes more sense. It's very much worth it. I really don't know how much I can say about the story itself without spoiling anything, which is a big thing for me. I try not to spoil anything, but I will say that you find out why you're playing Resident Evil Village very quickly. Like, the game picks up, you're in the role of Ethan Winters again. And what I mean by that is it's like, in Resident Evil, I guess I'm not really spoiling anything in Resident Evil 7. It's the story. Basically, in Resident Evil 7, you're going to like save your wife or your girlfriend or whatever she is. And so that gives you a reason to play through this fucking game as opposed to just get the fuck out of this horrible place and go home. Resident Evil 8 does the same thing. Not necessarily the same storyline, but in the first few minutes, it gives you a reason for Ethan Winters to hang out in this horrible place and deal with these horrible people instead of just leaving and going back to his fucking house and getting his poor massacred hand fucking looked at. And the reason it gives you makes sense. I feel like So like the reason you're playing Resident Evil Village makes sense, but I wanted to say, maybe it's just because I don't pay enough attention while I play these games, but like, fucked if I could tell you what the overarching story of Resident Evil is. If there even is one. I know Umbrella is a shitty company that makes zombies and experiments with drugs and stuff like that. I fucking get that. I understand that. After that, I'm pretty lost as far as what's going on in Resident Evil. And so I get why I'm playing Resident Evil Village. I understand why I'm there. I have no fucking idea how exactly it ties into Resident Evil as a whole. But I will say that, like, at least every game gives, like, the story of each Resident Evil game stands on their own. It's just, like, and frankly, the story of Resident Evil Village makes sense. It's when I try to combine it with all the other Resident Evil games, that's when I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I don't get it. But every game gives you a basic objective, a basic reason to play it, including this one. You know very quickly why you're playing it, and it motivates you to play through it. I think the overarching story of Resident Evil is a fucking disaster at this point, but what do I know? Maybe I've just been sleeping at the wheel, and it's just gone over my head. I just got to hydrate the voice here. Hang on. And I just spilled water all over my shirt. Fuck yeah. All right. Resident Evil Village also keeps the same first-person perspective 7 did, like I mentioned. And while it's not as scary, it plays phenomenally. And I wanted to say that too when it goes back to Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite video games ever. I never want Resident Evil to get away from the first-person perspective again, though. I feel like the horror genre has benefited more from the advances in gaming technology than any genre out there, except maybe racing games. Because, like, you can only make a game so scary with PS1 hardware where everything is made out of Lego bricks. It's just impossible. Whereas, like, you sit down and play Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Village, it's first person and it looks so real. The graphics are just stunning. And as great as I thought Resident Evil 7 looked and played in first person, Resident Evil Village is, I don't even think there's any sarcasm in this. It is one of the best looking video games I've ever played in my entire life. It is fucking stunning to look at. It sounds great. It plays silky smooth. I could not get, every time I played it or streamed it or anything, I was just bringing up how incredible this game fucking looks, especially when you think of like a Resident Evil game and you think that like by and large, it's going to be really dark and creepy and there's not going to be a lot of detail in the graphics. This game's not quite as dark at times and it looks so fucking real. I know that we do this every generation. We've all done it. You've played a game and you're like, games will never look better than this. But I really felt that playing Resident Evil Village. I'm like, how much more realistic can these games look than this? Now, I will say I played it on my Xbox Series X. Maybe if you play it on last gen hardware, it doesn't look quite as good, although I'm willing to bet it still looks pretty nice. But I thought it looked fucking stunning on my Xbox Series X. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your relationships are the only ones that aren't perfect? Especially with social media these days, it's so easy to peek at other people's lives and feel like they have it all together and you're just barely hanging on. But the truth is, nobody's perfect. And whether you're married, you're dating, you're single, therapy can help you have better relationships with the people you care about by helping you identify what you want out of life and what's bringing you down. BetterHelp can be an awesome way to take the therapy plunge. Their industry-leading match fulfillment rate means they do a great job of pairing you with one of their 30,000-plus therapists that are best suited to your needs. And if the pairing isn't a match, you can switch therapists anytime. Sessions can take place online as well, so you can meet with your therapist when and how it works best for you. BetterHelp has served over 6 million people globally, and they're rocking a 4.9 out of 5 average rating when it comes to their live therapy sessions. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/rememberthegame. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/rememberthegame. And as much as I love games like Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 2 Remake, which are third-person action games, 7 and Village have convinced me that Resident Evil should never not be first person again. It is just so much more engrossing. It really puts you into the shoes of Ethan Winters, the protagonist of these games, and the way you're looking around and the way you can't see what's coming at you unless you turn the camera and look up there. Whereas, when you're playing third person, you can see shit coming from a mile away and stuff like that. As opposed to like running around as like Leon. Because that's the other thing is when you play a third person game and you run around as the character you're playing as, you play that over the shoulder style. Like I love those types of games, but it's a lot harder to put yourself into the character's shoes that way. Whereas when you're playing a first person game and it's like you're seeing the game through the eyes of Ethan Winters in this case, it really fucking adds to the tension. It's so good. And then you tack on the incredible sound and everything like that. And like, it's just a real fun. I feel like it's kind of set the bar for first person games. I thought it was that fucking good. One of the best looking video games I've ever seen. And I never ever want Resident Evil to get away from that first person perspective again. That's how they should be played. As I mentioned, Resident Evil Village, I feel like there's a little bit more of a focus on action than there is survival, like there is in Resident Evil 7. And like I mentioned, same thing they did with Resident Evil 5 over Resident Evil 4. I know some people didn't like it and some people did. I think they almost lost sight of what Resident Evil games were with Resident Evil 5. It was just like playing a really fun shooter as opposed to playing a horror game. I do think they walked that line much better with Resident Evil Village. They did add a lot more combat and a lot more action and stuff like that. But they didn't lose sight of what made Resident Evil 7 so great. So I don't think it's nearly as big of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm losing my train. I can't think of the word. They didn't change the series. I got smoking too much pot these days. They're not changing the series like they did from 4 to 5. They stayed a lot more on the tracks with Resident Evil 7 to Resident Evil Village. It's not nearly the jump that those other games were, but it definitely is more action-y based. I will say, and just thinking about it right now, I would say the best 1-2 combo in the Resident Evil series is Resident Evil 7 and 8. I don't think there are two back-to-back Resident Evil games as good as Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8. And I think what also adds to that is going back to playing as Ethan again. I love that because it added to the continuity. I'm trying to think, but like Resident Evil 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Repeat characters pop up in all of those games. There's characters in the Resident Evil universe. but you keep playing as different people. It's not like Resident Evil 3 fires up and you just play as the same exact, character as Resident Evil 2 or fucking Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 3. I like that continuity. It's nice to just be like, oh, hey, it's fucking Ethan Winters again. We went through Resident Evil 7 together and that was fucking hell. And I guess now we're going to go through it again. I really liked that. And I wish it would do more of that kind of stuff. Just let me play as like one character through all the games. I think that's really fucking cool. So yeah, I feel like I might change my mind on this at some point, but no, I'm pretty confident that Resident Evil 7 and 8 is the best 1-2 back-to-back games in the Resident Evil franchise. I think I didn't really love Resident Evil 3. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Resident Evil 1 is just, it's good, but it's basic. 2 is really good. 3, yeah. 4 is awesome. 5, yeah. 6, 7 and 8 are both fucking spectacular. And I think it's all of that continuity. It's the same character, the same gameplay mechanics, that first-person action thing. I references to Resident Evil 7 in Resident Evil Village. I really fucking, like I said, it really does play as like Resident Evil 7 Part 2, which I think is fucking awesome. As opposed to like starting over from scratch like you do with all the other Resident Evil games. Smash Bro 2013 wrote in on Patreon and said, I thought the game was great. Definitely not my favorite of the series though, as I thought Resident Evil 7 was better and Resident Evil 1 Remake is one of my all-time favorite games. I thought a certain castle portion of the game was by far the best part, not for reasons some people might think, and the rest was just okay. I really like all the characters and atmosphere that the different sections of the game had, and the bosses were incredible. Not sure how I felt about the ending though. Solid 7 out of 10 game in my opinion. Definitely worth a try if you're interested. I think I would give it a little more than a 7 out of 10. I'll get to that in a minute. The one thing Smash Bro brought up is the different areas and the different atmospheres of the game all feeling different and everything. I liked that too because I thought overall the map, okay, so like Resident Evil 7, you're basically on this like acreage or whatever you want to call it, like this plot of land for most of the game. Whereas in Resident Evil Village, surprise, surprise, you're in a village. I just caught that. Resident Evil Village and you're in a village. No, you're in like this village and it's open world in air quotes, but it's nice and small. And the thing is it finds a way to keep the game fresh all the time. There's a lot of backtracking, but never in a shitty way. You get familiar with the area. You get familiar with the whole layout of the game. It's awesome. I feel like the overall, like the game world that Resident Evil Village is set in really adds to it. You get to know this village. You find stuff and you're like, fuck, I don't know how to get to that now, but I'm sure I'll figure it out later. Then you come back and things have changed because of something you did somewhere else. And I swore when I started playing it, I was like, I'm going to beat this game and I'm going to move on. Like, that's just it. But instead now, like I was going through looking for all the treasure and exploring everything and solving puzzles. And like Smash Bro mentioned, you go into like a couple of mansions and houses and castles and stuff, and they feel different but fun. And then you come out and you're back in that central village again. I think that the world that Resident Evil Village is set in really adds to the game. I loved it, frankly. I thought the village, the village setting was fucking great. Plus, it's like winter and you're outside, which made me feel kind of home because I live in fucking northern Canada where it is winter. Fucking, and I go outside. I literally take my dog on WALKs. I can't say the actual word because she's sitting right behind me and she'll get all excited if she hears that word. But I literally take her on WALKs that look a lot like Resident Evil Village's setting. And so I loved that fucking setting. And like I said, you get to know that village, and then when you have to backtrack through it, you can run through because you know exactly where to go. And fucking awesome. Just think of the village from Resident Evil 4. If you've played Resident Evil 4, the beginning of Resident Evil 4, when you come across the village and everyone's yelling at you, it's kind of like that, except there's fewer enemies. But I loved it. Fucking loved it. One of my big gripes with the Resident Evil games is that sometimes I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And what I mean by that is, like, I don't know if I'm supposed to fight a big enemy or if I'm just supposed to run away from this enemy. Is this one of those scenes where I'm going to waste all my best ammo on this enemy for no reason, only to find out that it was a fight that is predetermined and there's like a cutscene coming or something like that? I hate that kind of shit. Or I stand there thinking it is a fight where I don't need to use my ammo, and then it turns out I did and I had to die. Or puzzles, the same thing. There's one puzzle in this game that killed me half a dozen times before I figured out it kind of wanted me to go off the beaten path to solve it, but they really don't do a good job of making you understand that. It's hard to explain, but if you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. And there's like a big, bright, shiny fucking object that makes you think like, oh, this is how I beat it. And I frankly thought it was not implemented well. It killed me off half a dozen times before I figured out what I was supposed to do. But there's no inkling that this isn't what you're supposed to do. It just makes it seem like this is what you're supposed to do. You just need to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out in like 10 seconds, then you're going to die. You have to wait for the load screen and you have to go back and then you have to walk back over here and fucking try it again. That kind of shit irritates me. I love tough video games, but not when I have to hike back to the spot I was after a load screen. And I like it when it's tough, but I know what I'm supposed to do. That's where I get into, like, I love tough platformers and stuff like that. When it's a game like this where I'm trying to solve this puzzle and it's like, I have 10 seconds to figure out this puzzle before it kills me. And if I don't get it, then I got to hike fucking back for a minute to fucking do it again. Same with some of the boss fights. That's always been one of the things in the Resident Evil games that kind of irritated me. And I will say this game does a pretty good job of minimizing that. I can only think of one instance where I got stuck and I kept dying over and over again. And it just kind of pissed me off. And I know if you haven't played it, it's really hard to explain without, I guarantee there's people listening, they're just like, well, get good. But it really teases you with one thing. And like, I could see how you could just sit there for fucking 2 hours trying to do this exact same thing and just thinking, oh, I didn't do it right. I didn't do it right. I didn't do it right. And it never really gives you the inkling that you didn't, it's not that you didn't do it right. It's that this isn't what you're supposed to do. And I do feel like occasionally it falls back on that type of stuff. And I mean Resident Evil as a whole, but this one was pretty good at avoiding that kind of shit. This game has puzzles, just like most Resident Evil games have as well. They're very basic. They're not simple enough to make me chalk it up as a negative per se, but it's very close. I think like the puzzles that are optional, they're very difficult to solve. Stuff like finding the little metal balls and then dropping them into those like little handheld games. If you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. I love those because those aren't easy to figure out at all. But there's puzzles that you have to solve to continue the game. And it just happens to be that the solution to the puzzle you're trying to solve is always just written 2 feet away or on the wall or something like that. And I get that, like, do that so that nobody gets stuck in a puzzle forever. But it's like, there's no suspense here. And I guess maybe that's my biggest criticism of this game. And it's a really, listen, when you hear me score it near the end, like, I'm going to give this game a fucking really good score. It's a very minor criticism. But I feel like for the most part, they weren't able to find that happy balance when it came to the puzzles. The puzzles were either like this fucking trap that just killed me over and over again, or the puzzles are just like, oh, you've got 2 blocks and one's a square and one's a circle. And you've got a square and circle hole. I wonder what you got to do. Like they were either so basic or just kind of frustratingly stupid. That bothered me. Having said that, none of that shit was close to a deal breaker for me. And that's because this game was just so much fun that I didn't even care. I would get momentarily irritated when I got stuck at something, but then I was like, I just want to keep playing it because I'm really having a lot of fun. I didn't think it was bad. I just thought that they could have used a little bit more balancing. That's part of me, a little bit more balancing. I do love the enemies in this game. I don't know if I like them better than the hillbillies in Resident Evil 7. There's like, not like the generic enemies. I mean like the main antagonists. If you've seen any clips of Resident Evil 7 or played it or seen the demo or anything like that, there's these fucking creepy like hillbillies that are just terrifying. This game, again, without spoiling anything, you take on like a group of 4, I guess, creatures. They are like superpowers, and they all are very different from each other, personality-wise, power-wise. Some of them are definitely better than others. My favorite of the 4 is easily the doll. I won't, again, not spoiling anything. Just the doll is the creepiest one to me. I think it's the coolest one. I do think I like the enemies in 7 a little better, the antagonists, but the villains in this one are still cool. I think the problem with the villains in this game is that of the 4, 2 of them are rad, 2 of them are kind of weak. I think the doll is really cool, and then everybody knows about Lady D, the super tall woman dressed all in white that fucking people have been fantasizing about online since this game came out. And if you don't believe me, look her up. People have been talking about it. I labeled her Mrs. X while I was playing it because she reminded me so much of Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. I think she's fucking awesome. Frankly, I was a little shocked she didn't play a bigger role, considering that she almost seems like the title character from the game. When that game came out, she was the one everybody was talking about. I was a little disappointed that she wasn't more prominently featured in the game, but I thought she was really cool too. I really like that you've got the classic treasure to collect, like in all Resident Evil games. And then when you find the treasure, some of it can be combined with each other to make it more valuable. Some of it you just sell as it is. And then you get the merchant that you can go sell shit to. I like the merchant in this game. I wish it had been the merchant from Resident Evil 4. The iconic, like, what are you buying? Like that guy. I fucking love that guy. Sorry, my throat's getting fucking dried out. Yeah, so I didn't care for the merchant quite as much as Resident Evil 4, but the merchant in this game is pretty fucking good too. He's very well voice acted. He's charming in a fucking disgusting, creepy, weird way. I love that system in Resident Evil games, period. I like the idea of having a merchant to go deal with. I like that you've got like the briefcase that you organize your gear in, and then as you buy bigger briefcases, you've got a bigger like grid to organize your gear in to make it fit in there better and stuff like that. It was very, very, very reminiscent of Resident Evil 4, and I fucking loved it. Fucking loved it. So I've always liked that treasure mechanic, and I love that like you can go off the beaten path in this game and explore and find more valuable treasures, and then you bring them back to the merchant, sell them, and then you can buy better gear and more upgrades and shit like that. You can also collect food in this game, and then you take it back to the merchant, and then the merchant will cook up new dishes, and then the dishes give you like a permanent stat boost, like more health or whatever. I thought it was a cool idea. I just thought it was kind of half-assed. Like I used it a couple of times and I was like, all right, not bad. I'm not going to take points off. Doesn't take away from the game at all. It just seemed kind of added in last minute and kind of pointless, but I still like the merchant in this game a lot. He cracked me up sometimes when I saw him. He made me laugh. King Bahamut, excuse me, wrote in on Patreon and said, Resident Evil and Final Fantasy are my two favorite franchises, so I've played quite a bit and stored a lot of lore, trivia, and info in my mind on each series. Resident Evil 8 was, in my opinion, one of the best so far. It combined the supernatural action of Resident Evil 4's atmosphere with some of the shocking moments from Resident Evil 7's rebuild of the series. In terms of survival horror, I believe 7 has the edge, but as a Resident Evil title, Village fit in nicely. Resident Evil has always been about viruses and biohazards that cause mayhem, so as long as the creatures come from scientific origins, then I am content. Now, King wrote in there was a second part to King's comment about the enemies, but I'm going to bring up your second comment in the spoilers section, King. Not that they're major spoilers, but I just want to get into detail about the characters that you're talking about. But I wanted to say I agree with you. I feel like they took the best elements of Resident Evil 4 and This game is very much like Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 7 had a baby, which is high praise. Because I think those might be the two best games in the fucking series. Two of the top three anyway. So along with the Resident Evil 2 remake, I think. So I do agree with you. I think they did the best of both things to kind of make them work. One thing about Village that I think it did much better than Resident Evil 7 is I don't feel like it overstayed its welcome as much as Resident Evil 7 did. I think the final chapter, I guess you'd call it, the final portion of Resident Evil Village is a little forced, a little tacked on, but nothing like Resident Evil 7, the entire last portion of the game with the boat. And that's all I'll say. I don't want to ruin anything, the ship. I thought you could have removed all that altogether and it would have been fine. Like I found myself near the end of Resident Evil 7 starting to roll my eyes and be like, this could have ended an hour ago. Whereas I didn't feel that with Resident Evil Village. I thought that the final little epilogue, I guess, the final chapter to the game was maybe, again, a little bit unnecessary, but I didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome or anything, which it was really a testament to the game. Like, whether that was a conscious decision by the developers who heard feedback from people about Resident Evil 7's ending and were like, let's not do that again, or if it was just coincidental and they just, that was how they designed the game. I do like the ending to this game much better than I did Resident Evil 7. Call Me Watson wrote in on Patreon and said, so I made the mistake of playing Resident Evil Village without playing Resident Evil 7. They do a decent job of getting you caught up, but there's no substitute for actually playing the precursor. Overall, I really enjoyed the game as an action game. I'm struggling to recall any time this game really crawled under my skin and gave me that uncomfortable tension that Resident Evil is historically so good at. The game length was perfect, a solid 8 to 10 hours. I found the story to start out a little cliche, but then gain layers that I wasn't expecting. I got it on sale, so I'm pleased with my money for entertainment ratio, and I'm glad I spent the time playing it, but I'm not sure it's a game I'll revisit time and time again in the years to come. I agree with just about everything you just said there, Watson. I bought it on sale, and frankly, I would have, now that I've played it, I would have paid full price for it. The only thing I disagree with is that you said where to go. I'm struggling to recall any time this game really crawled under my skin and gave me that uncomfortable tension that Resident Evil is historically so good at. That's the one part I disagree with you, because 90% of the game, unquestionable. I didn't feel tense or scared at all for 90% of my playthrough of Resident Evil Village. But there is one part, which again, we'll get to the spoilers, that was scarier than anything in fucking Resident Evil 7, in my opinion. Except maybe the bugs. The bugs in Resident Evil 7 are fucking terrifying. But overall, you're right. It was more of an action game, which wasn't bad. It was really fun. But if you are looking specifically for scares, it's not going to hit as hard as Resident Evil 7 did. Is it better than Resident Evil 7? I feel like they're very different games, which is weird considering it's the same character playing the same way in both. I just think 7 was more about atmosphere and scares in this creepy house, whereas Resident Evil Village, you're outside a lot. And like I said, just being outdoors really seemed to alleviate a lot of the tension for me. It just became more of like a fun action game. I think they're both excellent. I think if you were to put a gun to my head and say, which game do you like better? I think I like Resident Evil Village just a hint more than Resident Evil 7, but that's because there was more emphasis on action and less on scares. I think if you prefer the scares to the action, you're going to like 7 more. If you like the action more, you're going to like Village a little better. And I will say, I think it's a feather in Resident Evil Village's cap that it didn't drag on as much as I felt Resident Evil 7 did. So, like I said, I bought it on sale, but now that I've played it, had I bought it at full price, I would have had no regrets. If I was being asked to score it out of 10, I would probably give it a 9. I'd probably give it like a 9 out of 8.5 minimum. I'd probably go 9 out of 10. I absolutely think it belongs in the Game of the Year conversation that it's being found in. I don't think it's going to win Game of the Year because I think it came out too early and there's some games in front of it like, Deathloop and Metroid Dread. And if you're a fucking real award show and not one of these shitty award shows that gives them out for November and back, Forza Horizon 5 and maybe Halo Infinite are going to give it a run. But I think it belongs in the Game of the Year conversation. Frankly, it was better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be good. I thought it would be like Resident Evil 5 to 4, where it'd be like, that was fun, not quite as good as the last one. But I enjoyed the fuck out of playing Resident Evil Village. I found myself every minute I had time to go back to play it, I wanted to play it a little bit more. And I do think of the 4 main antagonists you deal with, 2 of them are weaker, and I don't mean like less powerful. I mean, they're not as interesting as the other 2, but the game itself is so much fun to play that even when I was dealing with the characters I didn't like as much, I never found myself bored or like rolling my eyes. I actually think the main antagonist of the game, not these 4 characters, but like the final boss, if you will, I actually thought that they were the shittiest character of the bunch. Which again felt like a little bit of a letdown, but if it had dragged on for 3 hours and then I had to fight that boss, I would have been like, fuck this. The fact that they got it out of the way nice and quick and just put a nice little bow on it kind of saved it for me. It was well done. Before we get into spoilers, a couple more quick comments here. Kaiser Dragon wrote in on Patreon and said, I'm a big Resident Evil fan. I have been ever since the original back in 1996. I even like Resident Evil 6 to an extent. Ugh. However, I haven't played 7 or 8 yet. This is because I was skeptical about the direction Resident Evil was heading. After seeing high reviews for 7 and seeing original characters returning in Village, I'm now desperate to play them, but they're stuck in my backlog. Adam, I am truly hoping that your review episode on Resident Evil Village has me putting 7 and 8 to the front of the back burner of my games. It's coming a good time too, as I feel I'll have completed Red Dead Redemption 2 by Friday, which may mean Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 will be next for me. Kaiser, I don't know what else is on your backlog, but if you're a Resident Evil fan, yes, you gotta play these. I would recommend bumping them up to the top of your fucking list as soon as possible. Like, I am gonna do a ranking episode of the Resident Evil games eventually, and I don't know my order. I have to think about it, but Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 7, and Resident Evil Village all belong in the same conversation on that upper higher tier. They're well worth your time. So if you're a Resident Evil fan, you gotta play 7 and 8. You gotta fucking play them. Get them on the top of your list. And Chris Larkin wrote in on Patreon and said, I'm also a big survival horror fan. Being scorned by Resident Evil 6 had me looking the other way when Resident Evil 7 dropped. Needless to say, I haven't played 7 or Village. I'm disappointed in myself for not getting into 7 when it came out, as I'd be super hyped for the Village release. I just recently picked up 7 and Village for Black Friday and will be putting the hours into finishing these bad boys soon. Looking forward to your review, Adam. So Chris, one thing that you brought up, and this is kind of the last point I wanted to touch on before I get into the spoiler part of the show, The franchise really rebounded after Resident Evil 6 because I felt the exact same way. I hadn't played the original trilogy, loved 4, loved 5, despised Resident. Dude, I know that biggest gaming disappointments as a topic for Expansion Pass keeps losing, and which is the greatest thing in the world. I hope it never wins. But eventually we are going to do a biggest gaming disappointments episode of Expansion Pass. Resident Evil 6 is going to be right near the top of my list of biggest gaming disappointments. I fucking despise that fucking video game. And so when that came out, I was really turned off. I walked away for a long time too. And then it took a long time for them to drop Resident Evil 7. And then when they did, I fired up the demo because I was like, dude, I'd love to go back to the series. And the demo scared me so fucking much that I was like, I'm not playing this. I was like, I'm done. I'm not playing this fucking game. But then I finally got around to playing it, mostly for the podcast. I wanted to play it, because people kept telling me it was really good, and I'd always been intrigued by it, especially because since I lost Remember the Game, I'd gone back and played the original trilogy, and I played Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I was like, dude, I like this franchise. I got to get back into this franchise. And I wasn't so much skeptical of the direction they took Resident Evil 7 in because I thought it looked cool, the first-person idea. I was like, it's all new characters and stuff like that, but that's fine. But then when I sat down and played it, like I said, to kind of go back to where I was saying off the top of this review, I was like, this is spectacular. I never want a Resident Evil game that's not first person again. I mean, maybe the Resident Evil 4 remake that's coming eventually, but like, I think this is the way the series needs to go. And what I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm really happy that the franchise didn't die. Like, I'm really happy that they were like, you know what? Let's fix this. Let's take some time off. Let's catch our breath. I wish some sports games would do what Resident Evil did and just go back to the drawing board and just clean slate and just fix everything. And I know they won't because they got to turn them out every year to make that fucking cash. Fortunately, Resident Evil isn't an annualized franchise. I'm so ecstatic with the direction they're taking Resident Evil in. And 7 and 8, like, dude, I'm telling you all right now, we all know Resident Evil 9 is going to come out at some point. When Resident Evil 9 comes out, it'll be a day one purchase for me. It'll almost have to be. The wounds from Resident Evil 6 have healed. I poured some fucking green Gatorade on them like Ethan Winters does with his chopped up hand and fixed them and used some green herb, which you guys know I love. And yeah, I couldn't be happier with the way this franchise is going. So to all of you, before I get into the spoiler cast, which we're going to in a second, for all of you that are Resident Evil fans that have not played these yet, or if you just like horror games, play these games. And if you haven't played Resident Evil 1 through 6, I think you're fine. I think you can hop into Resident Evil 7. I would recommend playing 7 before Village. And I would recommend playing some of the old Resident Evils because they're, historic games and they're fun. And Resident Evil 2 Remake is fucking spectacular. But from a storyline perspective, I don't feel like you're missing out on anything. You could hop into Resident Evil 7 and be just fine. Just know that Resident Evil 7 is going to scare the fuck out of you. That game's fucking terrifying. That's all. So that is going to do it for the spoiler-free portion of the show. What I'm going to do now is cue up some music. There it is. When the music stops, I'll give you one last chance to bail before a short, just probably a 5 to 10 minute spoiler cast where I talk about some of the characters and stuff in the game. All right? There you go. There's your warning. Okay, this is your final warning, everybody. Short spoiler cast is starting in 69, 68, 67. No, 3, 2, 1. All right. Seeing Chris Redfield show up was rad because, longtime Resident Evil veterans are like, yo, it's Chris Redfield. He's fucking one of the Resident Evil guys. I know that guy. He's a piece of shit for most of the game. But that's not a bad thing. I love the way, you get to actually play as him again at the end. That's what I'm talking about at the end of the game. Whereas like in Resident Evil 7, I thought the end was kind of tacked on and boring. The end of this game, well, I do think I didn't care about fighting the final boss. I thought the boss kind of sucked. But you're out to try to save Ethan Winter's daughter, his infant daughter. And that motivates you. You're like, even if it's a video game, you're like, well, I got to save this fucking baby. I didn't give a fuck about Mother Miranda. I thought Mother Miranda sucked, quite frankly, as a character. But I was excited to play as Chris Redfield and play as a badass. And after this whole game where like you're fighting to the death with this fucking dude with no military training, missing 2 fingers, now all of a sudden you're just like this highly equipped fucking special operative with these super powerful guns and stuff like that. It was fun to kind of get to go beast mode and play as Chris Redfield near the end of the game. I will say that like I was confused the entire time while I was playing this, which I think you're supposed to be for a while. You're like, well, why the fuck did they take my daughter? Why the fuck did they kill my wife? Then you find out your daughter is actually like in 4 fucking vials of like ooze or something. And you're like, well, what the fuck would they do to my kid? And then it's like, well, why am I trying to save my kid when my kid is just these 4 jars? But then near the end of the game, they do a good job. Well, they do an okay job of making it all make sense. I thought it was a bit of a stretch and I was kind of confused by the ending of it, but I guess at the end of the day, you just want to kill Mother Miranda and then you save this fucking daughter that was made into these jars or something. I don't know. Frankly, I think the story in most Resident Evil games kind of sucks. It's just everyone's mutants and zombies and you fight them. And that's good enough for me. I don't care about the rest. Like I said, as far as the 4, I guess, henchmen for Mother Miranda, the 4 bosses, I loved 2 of them, liked 1, didn't care about the 4th. So the 2 I loved were Lady Dimitrescu. I don't know how to say it. The Lady D, Mrs. X, as I call her. She's so iconic. Like, I was so disappointed that she was like the level 1 boss. Like the first one you fight, the easiest one to kill, and you kind of, you fight her and her fucking weird bug daughters. I wanted her to be the final boss. I thought that she would have been a better, like, she should have been Mother Miranda. Frankly, I thought Miranda fucking sucked. I thought the Mrs. X was so much better. So I think she's almost as iconic as Mr. X. I fucking loved her. So badass. She's a giant woman with her fucking creepy bug daughters, who I also thought were rad. I love the way you have to fight them by like breaking open lights and letting the natural light hit them, and then you can fucking light them up. I thought that was really cool. And I love that you're doing it while you're running around in this giant mansion, which threw you back to Resident Evil 1 and just works for Resident Evil games. Really enjoyed that whole segment of the game. I thought was fucking awesome. Then there's the doll. I know in the doll is not technically the enemy. There's like an enemy that controls the fucking dolls, but I don't care. The doll is the enemy. Easily the creepiest. That whole chapter, the dolls mansion and that fucking basement, which we'll get into in a second, by far the creepiest and for my money the best level in the game, as it were. I like when you get out of the basement and then all the dolls are laughing at you and you're running around trying to find this one fucking creepy doll to fight at. You know what I mean? And I fucking, Marge, the doll's trying to kill me and the toaster's been laughing at me. I fucking love that whole segment of the game altogether. That basement of the doll's house with that giant fucking baby thing was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced in a video game. I was high as fuck. I smoked I smoked a whole bunch of pot and then was playing. And I think it actually helped because I wasn't quite comprehending what was going on. Jesus fuck. And that whole basement's just dark and you can hear that fucking thing crying. And then you knew something scary was going to fucking happen. And like, it didn't kill me. I'm proud of that. I got away and never once got its hands on me. But that was, for all of the people that are saying that this game wasn't scary enough and it wasn't as scary as Resident Evil 7, I agree with you as it wasn't as scary as Resident Evil 7, but that doll is scarier than anything from Resident Evil 7. Or not the doll, that giant baby. Fucking Jesus Christ. That chapter makes me hesitant to play this game again because I never want to go through that fucking part again. It felt like I was in a goddamn saw trap. Fucking terrifying. So the problem, I think, not a problem, but I think that's where the game peaked, was those two. The Lady D and the doll were both horrifying. Once you're done those two, then you got to go fight Salvatore, that fucking gross, disgusting fish guy, who I think most would agree is the weakest of the four. In my opinion, he should have been the first enemy, right? Because like after Mrs. X and the doll, he's a real big letdown. I think he should have been the first one that you fight. Then you fucking deal with maybe the doll, and then Heisenberg and Mrs. X should have been the final two. So I thought the fish guy kind of sucked. And then I thought Heisenberg, the way he controls metal and everything, was rad. I thought it was really well voice acted. I love the idea that he's trying to get you to work with him to take down Mother Miranda, and you don't believe him, but then you start finding notes and shit that he's left laying around where you're like, holy fuck, no, he does want to stop Mother Miranda. I loved all of that, but then you go up to Chris Redfield fucking gives you this tank and it's like, go fight him with the tank. You got it, Ethan. And I hated that. I was like, dude, I think it would have been much cooler if he had turned babyface and done, teamed up with you. I thought that would have been really fucking, I just feel like there was so much more. Here's your one. There was so much more meat on the bone with that character that I really felt kind of let down. You fight through his whole factory, which almost went on for too long, but not quite. And then when you get up there, it would have been really cool if you guys did work together to take down Mother Miranda instead of just having to fight him. Anyway, so I thought it was a really cool idea that just was kind of a letdown by the end. And then, like I already said, I thought Mother Miranda fucking sucked. Just a big bullet sponge. That fight, I beat it the first try. I thought it was kind of lame. Again, really disappointed that Lady D, she should have been the end boss, in my opinion. Like, she was so larger than life, literally. She should have been the big finale of the game, but you even could have said she even has 3 daughters in the game that are the bug villains. So why couldn't it have just been that, like, she wants to bring back her 4th daughter and that's why she has Rose? I just don't understand what the point of Mother Miranda even was. Just a shitty fucking final boss. Going back to, remember I mentioned that I cut off the second half of King Bahamut's comment? I want to go back to it now. The second half of King Bahamut's comment was, one complaint I do have is that the game seemed to lose steam toward the end of the 4 lords. Lady Dimitrescu or however you say it, Lady D and Donna were terrifying and elaborate, whereas Fishboy and Magneto felt a bit watered down in comparison. And I absolutely agree with that. I mean, basically that's what I've just been saying for the last 2 minutes. I totally agree. I'm on board with the fact that you need Chris Redfield to take down Miranda because he's like he's got all his training and his better guns and shit like that. But I think if the game had gone on much longer than that, I would have started to dislike it. And I would have much rather seen Ethan Winters take on Mrs. X than Chris Redfield taking on this weird fucking witch lady. Anyway, the first half of the game felt a lot like Resident Evil 7. And I felt like once you defeated the doll, then it shifted gears and became more of an action game. It's almost like 2 games in the same game. Like the first half is scares and the second half is just action. Not a bad thing, just I agree with you, King Bahamut. I felt it did lose some steam in the second half. I mean, I gave the game a 9 out of 10. I love this fucking game. I thought it was spectacular. But I think if the second half of the game had been as good as the first half, I would have been tempted to get closer to that 10 out of 10 range. I just felt like the second half, while fun, was a different game. I don't know how else to explain it. It feels like it's a different game for the second half of the game. And I also want to know how the fuck Ethan keeps attaching his poor hand with green Gatorade. But that's something we'll never know, I guess. Overall, though, I really liked it. Really happy with it. It was really fun to play. Didn't overstay its welcome. Even though, as King Bahamut worded that Fishboy and Magneto felt a little bit watered down compared to the first 2 enemies, they were still neat. I like that every boss fight was different. And I just wish Mother Miranda hadn't existed because she kind of sucked. But overall, great fucking game. So if you made it all the way to the end of the spoiler cast, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Expansion Pass. Again, if you're on the fence about playing Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village and you're a Resident Evil fan, you got to play these fucking games because it might be the peak of the series. And you got to remember too, this series is like, fuck, when did Resident Evil 1 come out? 96? So was that 25 years? And I would argue the series is peaked right now. That's great. And again, to me, that's advances in gaming technology benefiting the horror genre. I think this game has just gotten this franchise has gotten stronger over the years. I cannot fucking wait to see where they go with Resident Evil 9. Cannot fucking wait. Hopefully they have Mrs. X and Mr. X produce a baby X that's just not as scary as the giant baby in Resident Evil Village. So, thanks for listening, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'll be back next week with another Expansion Pass. Quick reminder, if you're listening to this the day it came out, Game Patch will be going live Saturday afternoon instead of Friday morning so that I can sneak in the Game Awards coverage and stuff like that. All right? Thanks a lot. You guys are the best. I will talk to you all again soon. What are you buying? Cheers. Goodbye.